In this lesson, we're gonna load tracks over onto our decks in Serato DJ Lite, and then we're gonna use the DDJ-SB2 to play them. You'll get to use the crossfader for the very first time here, and then we're gonna do a really rough mix from one deck to another, just to give you an idea of how the crossfader works. Let's go. There are two ways that you can load a track onto a deck. The first way is through using your DDJ-SB2 controller. Remember the browse knob and the deck load buttons that we talked about in the first video? Let's use them right now. Use the browse knob to scroll down up until you reach the crate folder that we made in the last video. Do that right now. Scroll all the way down. Here we are. And then I'm going to click on the browse knob, and you'll see that the highlighted bit goes from the left side of the browser over onto the right. And then now you can select the song that you want to load. I'm going to choose this one because I really like it. And then once I've got the track that I want to load highlighted, I can now press the deck load button for the left deck. And voila, it's going to appear on deck number 1 in Serato DJ Lite. That's it. You've just loaded your first track. You can also use your mouse by clicking on track and dragging it over onto deck. It's the same deal. Now that we've got a track loaded, let's explore the basic controls on the DDJ-SB2 needed to play a track, starting with the jog wheel. Moving the jog wheel lets you shuttle back and forth in the track. And it's perfect for picking out a specific beat to start out on. Let's try doing that. But first, let's check 3 things. First up, I'm going to make sure that the vinyl mode button is enabled. This means that when I grab the jog wheel, the track stops and responds to my hand movements, just like I was holding down on a record. If this weren't set to vinyl mode, let me show you what happens. So I'm going to hit play on the track. I've got vinyl mode now. I put my hand on the jog wheel, the track stops, and I can move it back and forth. However, if I disable vinyl mode, when I put my hand on the jog wheel, it doesn't stop. And if I move the jog wheel anti-clockwise, it slows down, or clockwise, it speeds up. So that's the difference. Basically, you're going to want to have vinyl mode set to on for the duration of this course and in your DJing as well, because it just feels more natural. And later on, if you want to do any scratching, you're going to need to have vinyl mode turned on. Second, I'm going to make sure that the Deck 3 button isn't enabled. This means that we're controlling Deck 1 in Serato DJ Lite, which is the left deck. Third, I want to make sure that the crossfader is set here to the left deck, which means that we're going to hear the left deck going out of the main speakers. And I also want the volume fader of the left deck to be all the way up so we get the loudest volume possible. Okay, now I'm going to pick out the first beat. I'm going to move the jog wheel. This is the first beat of the track. And then I'm going to add a cue point here by pressing the cue button. Pressing the cue button will tell Serato to add a cue point, and that basically means that from now on, every time you press cue, Serato will jump back to that point. Got the cue point there. Great. Now I can press play, and the track will play on through the main speakers. Awesome. Now I'm going to press the cue button, and notice that when I press it, it jumps back to the first beat and it stops playback. The first beat, again, is where we set the cue point earlier. Okay, great. So now that we've got a track over here, let's take a look at some of the other controls over on the left deck. I'm going to hit play again. The volume fader lets you adjust the volume of the left deck. If you move it down, the volume goes down. And if you pull it up, the volume gets louder. More often than not, you'll want the deck volume faders to be at their maximum. Now we can adjust the overall volume of the music coming out of the DDJ-SB2 by moving the master level knob over here, which lets you adjust how loud the main output is, whether that's a track playing in Deck 1, Deck 2, or even all the decks combined. You can adjust it to your liking depending on how loud you want it. I'm quite happy with the current volume level of the master output, so I won't be moving this anymore. Okay, cool. Now, let's load a track over onto our right deck, or deck 2 in Serato DJ Lite. Let's pause this. I'm going to pick another track from our crate. Use the browse knob. Here we are. And then I am going to use the deck load button for deck number 2. Cool. Now I'm going to make sure that vinyl mode is enabled. And the volume fader is set to its maximum. And then I am going to add a cue point at the first beat by scrolling through it using the jog wheel. Nothing's coming out of the main speakers. Well, why is that? Oh, it's because the crossfader is set all the way to the left. Remember that the crossfader dictates what goes out of the main speakers and what doesn't. At the moment, it's only set to let through the left deck. So how do I preview this song that I just loaded over onto the right deck? Okay, remember that we connected 2 sets of outputs to the DDJ-SB2. The main speakers and the headphones. DJs use headphones to preview music that isn't coming out of the main speakers. Yes, those things that DJs wear on their heads actually serve a practical purpose apart from endorsement deals and looking generally really cool. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to do a bit of audio magic. You're going to hear the main speakers on the left channel and the headphones on the right channel. Okay, so here's how to use headphones while you're DJing. Remember, we talked about the headphone cue buttons. I'm going to press the headphone cue for the right deck to enable it. That means that this deck, or deck 2 in Serato DJ Lite, is being sent to my headphones. That means that this deck, or deck 2 in Serato DJ Lite, is being sent to my headphones. Next, I'm going to adjust the headphone cue knob and move it all the way anti-clockwise. That means that the only thing I'll be hearing in my headphones will be deck 2. Cool. Now let's move the jog wheel in deck 2. I'll now be able to hear it in my headphones. Awesome. So shuttle back to the first beat. Now we can add our cue point because we can hear it. And press the cue button. There we go. Now we've got our cue point on the first beat, just like what we did with the left deck. Now when I press play, we can hear it playing back in the headphones, but not in the main speakers. Not loud enough for you? You can use the cue volume knob here, or the headphones level knob, to adjust the headphone volume. Simply adjust it to your liking. I'm pretty happy with how loud it is right now, so I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, so let's stop this track first. Just a quick midway recap. I showed you how to load tracks onto both decks, how to use headphone cue to preview and cue up a track you want to play next, and I also showed you how the volume faders work. Now that we've got 2 songs loaded, let's try mixing them. Mixing them means that you are going from one song to the next. That means going from deck 1 over onto deck 2. Mixing is usually done with a crossfader. If I press play now, we'll start playing deck 1 and we'll hear that in the main speakers because we've got the crossfader set to the left deck. If we hit play on deck 2, we won't hear it coming out of the speakers, only in our headphones because we've got headphone cue engaged. In order to hear deck 2 coming out of the speakers, we need to move the crossfader from the left over onto the right. This is just going to be a quick and dirty mix, but it's a good way to demonstrate how a crossfader works. Let's try that right now. I'm going to go back to normal sound. You'll hear the main speakers coming out of the left and right channels. Okay, so I'm going to hit play on deck 1. Now I'm going to hit play on deck 2. Now I'll move the crossfader from the left to the right. You'll slowly hear deck 2 come out of the speakers until eventually deck 1 fades out and all you can hear is deck 2. That's it. That's your first mix. Now, I know it doesn't sound so good. It sounds like the two tracks were clashing and it sounded kind of messy. That's what you call a train wreck. And that happens because the two tracks I tried to mix weren't in the same BPM or tempo. In the next lesson, I'm going to explain how to get the BPM of two tracks to match. But for now, I want you to have a go at it. Pick two songs from your library, load them onto the decks just like what I did, add the cues using the jog wheel and cue button for both decks, enable Headphone Cue, press play on the DDJ-SB2 for deck 1, and then for deck 2, and then I want you to move the crossfader from the left deck over onto the right deck. I'm going to see you in the next lesson.